Hello, Professor, TAs, and anybody else who may be watching. My name is Shlomo Allouche, and for my video response to our first assignment, Truthiness and Truthfulness, I will be covering the idea of informed consent. But first, a brief moment to explain my approach. So in this video, I will explain my perspective on informed consent in Canada before I entered Healthcare Law 3101B. In other words, my truthiness. Afterwards, I will present the truth of informed consent in Canada, which I will support with research and facts. In other words, the truthfulness of informed consent. To conclude, you'll see how my initial perspective is crossed with the truth. In so doing, you'll see what I got right and vice versa. We only have a few minutes, so let's get into it. Now, initially, I believed that it was required to give any and all information of a treatment's risks, benefits, or alternatives to a patient before they can make a decision and give consent. I initially believed this was a principle created by physicians or those licensed to practice medicine in our healthcare system rather than, the law. First thing, the general principles of consent in Canada are derived from two sources. Common law or judge-made law, essentially rules derived from court decisions in prior cases, and legislation such as the Healthcare Consent Act, proclaimed in 1996. Now, these principles are meant to protect and enhance our personal autonomy when making decisions regarding our health. This is outlined in Section 1 of the Healthcare Consent Act. Now, regarding informed consent, Oxford Languages defines this idea as permission granted in the knowledge of the possible consequences, typically that which is given by a patient to a doctor for treatment with full knowledge of the possible risks and benefits. This definition is made narrower with the Healthcare Consent Act, Section 11, Elements of Consent, subsection 2, which outlines the necessary conditions for informed consent. But that's not all, because even these conditions have conditions themselves. You can't just be a person, you must be a reasonable person. If you lack this capacity, a significant and reasonable person in your life, otherwise known as a substitute decision maker, can give informed consent on your behalf. Well, that was an overwhelming amount of truthfulness, but in all seriousness, informed consent is significantly important. Take, for example, Rebel v. Hughes, a landmark Supreme Court of Canada case heard in 1980. Keep in mind, this is 16 years before the Healthcare Consent Act was enacted. In this case, John Rebel, the plaintiff, suffered a massive stroke, which left him paralyzed on the right side of his body immediately following a medical procedure worked on by the defendant and surgeon, Robert Hughes. Rebel claims he was not informed of any risk of paralysis that may occur during or shortly after the operation. In fact, Hughes, the surgeon, stressed that the chances of paralysis were greater if the patient did not undergo the surgery. Now, the facts of this operation, stroke, paralysis, or death were among the risks of undergoing the surgery during or after its occurrence. Rebel claims if he knew about these risks, he would have foregone the surgery and opted for a shorter, normal life rather than one as a cripple. Here, the court sided with Rebel and stated that a reasonable person in the plaintiff's position would, on the balance of probabilities, have opted against the surgery rather than undergoing it at the particular time. Now, this case is important because it has set a precedent for medical malpractice, established a reasonable person as a standard with regards to informed consent, and created an objective test to measure whether a reasonable person would have opted out of the surgery if properly informed. To conclude, while I was kind of right in a very general sense with regards to the requirements, I was also misguided with how the principles of informed consent came about, and just how nuanced the whole idea is. I believe I'm more knowledgeable and truthful regarding informed consent now than I was before entering Healthcare Law 3101B and the significance that informed consent plays in our healthcare system. Lastly, I hope you enjoyed this video. All support and facts are linked in the description below, and thank you for watching.